Welcome to Beyond the Policy, the podcast where we go past the fine print and into the real stories that shape how we live, work, and protect what matters most. I'm Matt Carafa, risk advisor, consultant, and founder of the Be Better Foundation, where each week sit down with clients, colleagues, and industry voices to talk about business, life, and the passions that drive each of us and the areas we can all work on to truly be better. This is Beyond the Policy. Welcome to Beyond the Policy. Excited to have a conversation today with Brian Swope with Rudolph Libbe Group. So, Brian, thanks for taking some time to be here. And before we get started, if you wouldn't mind, just how you got to Bowling Green and what you're up to these days.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me on, Matt. I ended up at Bowling Green in 2014, and that was actually after a long, circuitous route. I was here at college from 1981 to 1985, 1984. In fact, it was 42 years ago Monday that Jenny and I met, and then on 4th Street. And then we got married in 90, and then we moved around a lot. And eventually reached a point where it was time to move back to Toledo because I wanted to get closer to Jenny's mom,
Yep.
to help her age in place, right? To help her age. And so there was an opening at the university at that time, and as a director of campus construction. So I seized that opportunity, came up here and worked at the university for 6, 7 years before taking on the fourth quarter of my life, which is at Rudolph Libbe. Yes.
Yeah. And most of that 40-year career, has it been in the construction space, or what avenues have you gone down over those years?
Yeah, so it's all 40 years have been in construction. I graduated with a degree at that time. It was called construction technology from BGSU. Now it's a construction management, but it's the same thing. And I started with a construction company right out of college, and I've been in construction ever since.
Yeah. And I've had some friends in the years graduate from that, but from what I've gathered, that program has grown significantly over the years and is kind of one of the main, is it a main college, or is it its own college, or part of at BGSU?
So no, it's part of the College of Technology, which is now called the College of Technology Applied Engineering, or they've even changed the name recently from that. So I'm sorry I'm not up on current with that. Um, But yes, when I was in school, it was a smallish group of guys that went to school there. And in fact, we still keep in touch with a lot of my graduates. I worked with 4 other ones at Rudolph Libbe from
Oh, wow.
1985. Yeah. And so, um, and then, yes, it's really grown. So it was 1989, they hired a gentleman who you might know. His name is Travis Chapin.
Okay.
Travis lives out at Euler Road now. He and his wife, he's retired, but he came to the program and he just really ramped it up. He got to the point where we had large national firms. He raised the stature of the program just through the sheer force of his personality. Stature of the program raised up who was coming to recruit
Hmm.
at the school, national contractors that weren't there when I was in school. He did tremendous things for the program, and really made it really blossom. And I would think now, if you look at I don't have any actual evidence to support it, but if you look at the starting salaries of construction management students at BGSU, they're probably certainly in the top 4 or 5 at the university.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
And one thing I always like to ask people, because everyone's path and story is different of how you got there. Was there a point in your life that you knew when you were X amount years old that you knew construction was for you, or what was that moment where like, you know what, that's what I'm going to do?
Well, that's a really great question. So I always loved construction, and I was thinking about today and reflecting on my life, I can remember when I was in 3rd grade. We started a new elementary school, Amherst Elementary, and they were building the school had opened up, but they didn't have a gym, so they were building a gym. And I can remember as a little guy, um, just sitting there, all the boys are out there playing kickball and whatnot, and I'm just sitting there leaning up against a fire hydrant. I can still see it to this day, watching them build this gymnasium, and I was just enamored with the process. Now, it was fostered because my dad was in construction. That's what
Fair.
brought him to Columbus,
Yep.
and he worked for a developer, John W. Galbraith Company. And that's kind of what brought me to BG in the fact, well, he got me started in construction when I was 14. I went to work for a construction related firm and had a good time doing that, and really, again, fully solidified my belief that this is my career. And then, when I was a senior in high school, I was junior year going to senior. I was kind of waffling. I thought seriously about being a history teacher. It's always been one of my favorite things to do, but I also wanted a career in construction. Dad at the time was with John, as I said, John W. Galbraith, a developer. They were developing which is now the Fifth Third building downtown Toledo,
Okay.
which was he was the project manager for that, which at that time was Owens, Illinois, big tall blue building downtown. And through that, Bill Brewer, who was at the time the director or chair of the construction technology program at BGSU, he was doing some consulting work on that particular facility. Introduced Dad, got to know him, and through that, he said, "Well, bring your son up, show him around," and the rest, as they say, is history. So yes,
I think that's, with working with some kids through the Be Better Foundation and at various ages, and we're not knowing, what their passion is, like being able to connect them. So I always think that's a unique question. You as third grade,
yeah,
which you can, sounds like you vividly remember like that point in time. So I think that's kids don't realize it often enough that what they're going through now could shape, what they become in the future and what they get exposed to and how that. So I always find
absolutely,
that
yeah,
curious.
absolutely. I'm also thinking that I guess my dad was trying to steer me in my life. When I was a little boy, he built this sandbox, and it was seemed to be as big as all outdoors, right? And I was forever Tonka trucks, making roads and building buildings and things like that, and really had a great time doing it. So it was always something I enjoyed doing. In fact, I look back on that now. There's days when we have a lot of equipment running around on the site, and it just brings me joy to be on a project. Like I've never left the sandbox, right? It's just, yeah,
That's awesome. I was one follow-up question to that of, it sounds like your dad might have had an influence on going down that path, but anyone else either through college or early on in your career that, helped you, as you mentioned earlier, you're in the fourth quarter of your career now, but maybe in the early part that helped shape you, as was it bigger projects that someone helped you from a mentorship or guidance standpoint that sticks out to you?
yeah. Through a lot of, I think, good luck, and I was very fortunate. I ended up working for a large national CM firm called Gilbane out of Providence, Rhode Island. We had an office in Columbus at the time, and then from there, when I hired on there, I worked there. But in 1995, I got assigned to a project. It's still downtown. It's the headquarters for Department of Public Safety and Department of Transportation down on the hilltop in Columbus. The project manager was a gentleman named Don McCarthy. Don is still a dear friend, and he just turbocharged my career. He was an out of the box thinker, and just really taught me to think about and conduct myself in a whole different way. I mean, I thought I was on the right track, but Don exposed me to new ways of dealing with people, of addressing problems, of leading projects, what you focus on. And to that, I mean, I am, again, we're still good friends to
Yeah,
this day, and I'm always going back to him because the thing about Don is I always say I think arguably he's probably one of the top construction minds in Ohio. Um, but one thing about Don is it's always unique is the fact that every time you talk to him, he'll approach a subject in a way you would never thought about it. Right? I'm just not that as a creative a thinker as Don is, but boy, when you sit down, Don, I've got a perplexing problem, or talk to him about it. He just sees the world a whole different way that really opens your eyes.
yeah. I think those conversations and those people, no matter what it is, whether it's in construction, your profession, personal, whatever, those people are always valuable because they don't think like you and, to bounce ideas off and
That's correct.
get out of the box. And, with that, if we span your career of 30 plus years, people are still building buildings. Probably the way that has changed. So I'm always curious in your 30 years, I wouldn't ask you to pick one thing that's changed the most in there, but as your career in construction over those, what would be the most different or that would have kind of changed considerably over that time frame?
Oh, that's a yeah. So that's a really good question. So I would say, and I'm looking at it right now, and from when I started, um, it was we often joke, but in 1985, safety on a project was nothing more than a hard hat. It's now become fully enmeshed in our corporate DNA. We start every meeting with safety. We have new safety apparatus out. We have new protocols for safety.
Hmm.
We do more things to protect the employee, which is really great. So safety has certainly been one aspect that has changed radically over those 40 years. And the second part would be the technology. It went for a long time. Now, we as an industry, we adopt slowly, and you're really always going to have a hard time. We quickly jumped on cell phones, right? So we're always in touch, and certainly we have jumped on email, right? But in terms of other technologies, but now it's really starting to evolve. In fact, on the BG High School project right now, the past 3 days, we have we used to lay out all the walls and doors and everything else with, be a person up there or two.
Yeah.
And now we have this robot that essentially is a rolling inkjet printer that's going across our floors with the CAD drawings loaded into it. That's laying out all the walls. We add where the HVAC openings are, door swings, door types. I mean, all this data is flowed in there and now is laid out on the floor. Again, it freed up somebody from doing it. Um, and it really is interesting the way where we're heading right
Yeah.
now.
And one thing when I talk to a lot of people in different industries, artificial intelligence, AI is impacting every industry differently. With the robotics piece that you just mentioned, is that in the AI role or is that just CAD, on
It's a new way of using CAD. Now, if you want to get into AI, where it's using it right now is so for Time Eternal, we take a lot of progress photos of the project. Um, as of late, on especially BG High School project, um, we're using a product called Open Space. And what Open Space does is we have once a week, we have our co-op, Meet Patel, and he has a 3D 360 camera that's mounts on a hard hat. And he walks the site and just takes hundreds of thousands of pictures. Now, what OpenSpace does, they'll take that information, compared against the CAD drawings, compared against the schedule through AI, and tell you how far along we are, where we're behind. They'll also be able to tell you what we might be missing in terms of did we miss a receptacle here? Yeah, how far along are we in ductwork
hmm
installation? All kinds of things. It's really, really cool. And plus, then you also have, when you're finished, a great history of the project, what's behind the walls, and everything else, so that everybody's, well, what'd you do in this particular area? I can go back to a specific location in the building,
Sure.
scroll back through and say, okay, this is how this was constructed. I know I didn't forget that piece of blocking, or no, I
Right.
did get all that pipe in there. Yes.
Yeah. And I think that's another thing that I'm always, again, trying to learn and understand. There's a lot of talk in the insurance space with AI that it's going to replace jobs. And I think in construction, AI can never replace a human swinging a hammer or, doing some of the physical stuff. But I am intrigued. And it sounds like ours is it's not going to replace, it's going to enhance.
Yes.
And from what you just shared, I feel like it's going to enhance efficiency, production, all that. It's not going to replace humans, but definitely help them be more efficient.
Precisely correct. Absolutely correct. And make us more, again, more accurate in what we do. I think that if you look at, Matt, if you look at technology, all the great evolutions of technology, be it steam engine or whatever you want to call about, whatever it wants to be, um, there's always a there's always concern about the new technology and that it's going to eliminate jobs, right? That's how we got the name Luddite, right? Because they didn't want to have automatic whatever the carpet machines or whatever they were making, whatever they were doing. And so, but the the fact of the matter is that, yeah, there's a bit of churn that will happen as this evolves,
Sure.
and there will be some job losses. But as I like to say, is what we'll find is 10 years from now, I honestly believe there'll be tens of millions of new jobs that we never could have imagined existed, and people are gonna be earning decent livings doing things that, wow, could never think of that. Yeah,
Right. And I just think, buildings are never going to disappear. There's only going to be some that are old and need torn down and new ones. And just as that technology advances, it's just going to progress with time like everything else.
that's correct.
Yeah. So when it comes to specific projects, and we'll spend a few minutes talking about the current one that's near and dear, in Bowling Green specifically with the new high school, which had a lot of emotion tied to getting to this point, and now we can actually see walls
Yes.
and floors and everything coming together. We've seen the drawings, and again, I'm sure we could spend hours talking about everything that goes into it, but maybe just, in the next couple months, obviously we can see progressing each day, but kind of where we're at and kind of what's next in the next couple months.
At BG High
Or-
School? Yeah, sure. In the next couple months, we have so the Bowling Green High School project, big picture, is going exceedingly well. We have an outstanding team of trade partners and leaders. I couldn't be more complimentary of the of Dr. Hazelman and Matt Fiesel and that leadership over there in the school board. They're really supporting the project. And then we in turn have a great architect in DLR Immersion. And then our trade partners we've hired have just been outstanding.
Yeah,
And so the next couple of months, what you're going to see is we have a goal, and I would say it's a bit of a stretch goal, but to have the building from all appearances on the outside buttoned up by the end of September, right? It's going to be a bit of a stretch goal, but it's doable because we've made up a lot of time here during the winter time, during this past winter and into the spring. And so what people will be seeing now going forward be brick going up on the walls. Then you'll be seeing glass in the building and the new curtain wall up front. You'll see us finishing out the gym, which is to the most northern part.
yep,
Once we have that ready to go, once we get those walls up, we'll see that roof will go on. That'll really start taking shape. And so, yeah, in the next few months, you're going to see a lot of radical changes.
yeah,
All the while, there's a lot of things going on the inside of the building. What the reason why I drive for enclosure is, the things you can control mostly in a project is getting the structure up and then enclosing the building, right? We try to, and that usually takes about up to 50% of the time. Schools, it's a little bit different because there's a lot of masonry bearing walls, which is adds a whole different element to it. But that said, so you look at 50% of the project, and for us to get to that 50% of the project, you're only looking about having to really effectively 4 or 5 contractors, right? There's a few of them that can get us to that 50%. Once we get inside the building, it gets a lot more complicated, right? A couple things happen. One is you have a lot more people walking, so it's now 12 to 15 to 20 contractors in an area. Secondly, this is when the design really gets tested, right? Oh, okay, this doesn't work so well. So you have some what they call errors and omissions type of error questions and stuff come
sure.
up. And then and also at the same time, and this is, I mean, I don't think this PG schools will be this way, but I can tell you stories. Many clients, they use these buildings as a full scale mock-up. So they walk in there, well, this space isn't going to work. I got to do this. I want to reprogram this, right? And so you end up with these owner changes starting to consume it. So the more time I can give by getting the job enclosed quicker, the more it gives us insurance for the end date,
Sure.
which is June of 27.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you are the project manager at the top who manages all of those four at a time contractors to up to 20 and kind of all the day to day. Is that correct?
That's correct. I am the project manager. I am fortunate to work with an outstanding team of professionals that really do a yeoman's job of the day-to-day heavy lifting.
Right.
But the team is a really strong team.
Yeah.
Yes.
Someone like me with a background of when I drive by a building, I just think, oh, that's cool. It exists. And my mind doesn't always go to how it got there. So seeing drive by it every day and then being able to have conversations with you like is a whole different appreciation of how all this stuff is done. And it's not just, oh, we wait 3 years and poof, there's a
Y-
school. So being a little more, when you go by something every month, it's different perspective than when you see it every day. Like, oh, nothing's changed. And then you look back a month ago, there wasn't even a second story there.
Yeah. So we fly the site with drone photos every other week. And it's just, in fact, the other day I went back at a cause to go back and I looked at where we were last week. And then I said, well, where were we a month ago? And it's striking how,
Right.
when you look back, wow, we've really come a long way in 1 month, right? I
Right.
can't imagine what this is going to be in 2 months.
Yeah.
And you think about where we were we started foundations in late November, early December, right? So it really has gone very, very well. Yeah.
Right. And when it comes to project management and managing, all those people, and I want to touch a little bit on what you mentioned earlier with the safety, going from a hard hat was your check mark that you had to what it is today from the insurance side, I know how much important safety is from job site to damaging, property and premise, and obviously taking care of everybody on the site. How do you manage that, or has your leadership in project management kind of taken that in consideration when you essentially are at the top for 20, 30, 40 contractors throughout the phase of a project?
Well, we're now on the BG High School right now. We now have 100 out there. Yeah, so we're growing, and the thing is you got to be a consistent message, right? We require everybody to go through safety orientation. So they'll before they start the job, they'll go through an orientation. It takes about 45 minutes or so, an hour, to go through, and then we have things they have to do. Each contractor has to do twice a day. For example, each crew has to do a pre-test planner. Um, in the morning, okay, this is what you're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it safely. And then in the afternoon, right after lunch, because people seem to forget things, they go back and they do a pre-test planner again. And we log all that into a piece of software um, called Hammer Tech. And then in addition, we do crane inspections on a regular basis. But I think the big thing is, those are the technical aspects. The big thing is it's got to be a constant reminder. You have to demonstrate your commitment to safety. Again, as I said, we start every meeting talking about safety, whether I'm meeting with the owner, with our trade partners, whomever. Safety is always the number one item on the agenda. And we want to talk about where we are, where our challenges are. Um, and any safety um, comes from the leadership down, right? So our president, Jeff Schaller, a friend of mine and our classmate from 1985, he believes in this, right? This is his thing, and he emphasizes it. And every time he talks to us, right, he talks about, what are we doing? How are we doing the job safely? So I really am pleased with that. I work for the companies I mentioned earlier, Gilbane, and they're always really pushing the envelope on the safety aspect. I was talking with Billy Gilbane one day. This is after I left the organization, and Billy and I were chatting about how he's bringing people, what he's doing to improve safety. And he had just spoken at the Lean Construction Institute, and he's talked about the fact that the company reached a point where the statistics were great, um, but those statistics are people, right? So you can say, well, our incident rate or lost time rate is this. Well, that's all well and good, and it's very low for the industry. However, what is it that you're doing that, but that one statistic is a person, right? So somebody got hurt, right? And that's not good. We don't want that,
Mm.
or worse, right? And so they really started focusing Gilbane on some really innovative things. Um, like just they require everybody shows up on the job site. They have a very lengthy orientation. They required everybody at that time. I think they were telling me that they required everybody put a picture of the reason why you go to work in your hard hat, right? Um,
Mm.
and and so why you're there. Put your name on it so you can talk to the person, right? So you always know their name on the hard hat, so you can say them by their name,
Mm.
because you never want to. You always want to, and no matter where you go, and really what safety boils down to is really knowing the person, right? You can't ever fail to see the humanity in somebody, and that's always been my big driver. And the same thing goes with safety, right? You always want to see the person there and understand you want them. You want them to go home every day to
You
their
don't want
loved
to
ones.
be just a statistic. It's,
That's right.
yeah. And I think, as it relates, on my side, from the commercial insurance standpoint, when we look at contractors, all the questions that an underwriter or someone assessing risk in, a company like Rudolph Liberty doing projects like this and having multiple jobs going on at, various times throughout the year, how can you monitor and track safety? And it always comes down, I would echo what you said, it's the culture. If leadership and at the top it's not important, it's not going to be important to the guy on the
That's
second
right.
story, doing it. So that's good to hear that, because I'm sure you've seen companies or places or projects where it's not, and those statistics are probably higher than they should be.
Yeah. So what I like to tell, especially young people, when I was teaching, I go this: 90% of construction companies have fewer than 10 employees. And so when you look at and so when we go in our world, okay, which is large construction, Rudolph Libbe is a highly sophisticated, very progressive company, right? And and progressive from all aspects, the human resources perspective, everything else, safety. But that's not the industry, right? The chunk of this industry now, in terms of dollar volume, we consume most of it, but there's a whole lot of construction going out here, building it could be, the Jimmy John's down the street,
Yeah.
right? And those firms generally are the ones that you have to be most worried about because they don't see the value in safety.
They're just on to the next job, the next dollar,
That's right.
the next check. Yeah.
Yep. And you go by, a lot of construction is home construction. And you go by there and they were Jenny and I were walking one day and we were walking at the corner and and um yeah, I think there was well down there and ends. Anyways, they're building those new houses, Airbnbs or whatever they are. And so there's a gentleman up there, some guys doing scaffolding, and this scaffolding was rickety. I mean, somebody's going to get hurt. And I walked by and I said to myself, boy, I needed to stop that because
What if?
yeah, because somebody could get hurt that way. But that's sadly that's that element of the industry. You go, next time you're at a house, that's being built in your neighborhood, right? You look around and you'll see people exposed to risks that they ought not be exposed to, and their management doesn't seem to care. They're just production based, right? Get it done. Yep,
Yeah.
get it done.
Yeah. And I think that's the toughest thing to show on paper versus actually someone you that day to day and lives it. That's very difficult to do, but as important as
Yes.
anything else. So if someone, in your career, you talk to someone, wanting to get in, student at BGSU, getting into construction management, or even maybe the third or fourth grader that you come across who
Mhm.
has a passion for just looking at bulldozers and cranes and all that stuff, what would you tell someone in their journey to, figure it out, of questions to ask or what to be aware of, to pursue a career in construction management these days?
Well, so the nice thing about construction is like just take a generic construction company. We have opportunities for all sorts of people. We have people that we have people that do our pre-construction that are very involved in, they're at their desk every day doing estimates and stuff like that. Then you move out to the field like where I am, and it's more of a dynamic environment in terms of you're out, you're moving around a lot, you deal with a lot of question, a lot of vagaries, right? You got to live and embrace the gray, so to speak. And there are roles for all those types of people. So all kinds of personality types can find a home there. Where we find I think this is just my opinion. People that have a proclivity towards um, working with their hands, being tactile learners, whatever, will generally find a home in construction and find a great level of success. Um, I used to, when I taught at BG, I would take students and have them go. I said, it's important you to understand how you learn. And it was surprising to me because the smallest percentage of across the country of learners is what they call kinesthetic, which is tactile. But they were always an outsized role, personality type of those who are finding a career in construction. So it's kind of funny that way. So yeah, if you find that, if you're that kind of person, you like that. Yeah. Do you remember when you're in, I think I was in freshman year, you take this aptitude test that tells you where you should end up in work, right? And I took that and it said I should be a forest ranger, a merchant marine. Construction was one of them. If something was going to keep me outside, and if that's what you like, then yeah, construction is your home.
I took a sales aptitude test right out of college, and team sports, team everything was my whole life.
Yeah.
And it took a sales test, and I go back like a week later after the things, and the guy goes, "You might be great, but I can't hire you because it says everything on this sheet says you should not do any of this."
Uh-huh.
Because it was all, how do you work on your own? Are you self-motivated?
Yeah.
You had all those things, but when you're in like a team
Yeah, sure.
mindset or whatever of your whole, life up to that point. So that was a rude awakening of, like, not rude awakening, but just self-awareness of how that can be perceived and, go through all that. So
Well, no, I hear you. Construction. So I worked with a gentleman, Jim Patterson, and he played tackle for Michigan State, but this is back in the 50s. And we had a debate one time on a project. It was a large project. So we're sitting around just, what is the greatest team sport? And we were going, I think football because it has more diversity, those types of things. Um, Baseball, perhaps. But Jim he said, look, I've played those sports. There's no better team sport than construction. I mean, it takes all kinds of people to make these jobs successful, all kinds of skill sets, all kinds of talent levels, all kinds of, types.
Yeah.
And it's really just a fun way to earn a living that way. Yeah.
That's awesome. And as we wrap up here, you've heard me say it or can see it, my life motto, be better.
Yes.
Whether it's raising kids, working, personal, whatever it is. So, we've hit on a few that you've outlined, safety and in your project management and career. Any other life mottos or, things you rule by when you were teaching or in your job now that we can leave the audience with as we wrap up here?
Well, I think it's with anything you do. I like your idea, be better, because so I look at things as vocations, and vocations to me as defined is that it's something you do that every day you wake up, how can I do it better the next day? Okay. And it doesn't, and you can't separate it from your life. So for me, it's how can I be a better husband today than I was yesterday, right? How can I be a better project manager today than I was yesterday? I mean, it's always constant improvement, right? And that's a vocation. And so always my advice to people is treat your life as a vocation and don't separate it. Say, well, I can be a really good person in this area and be something else over here. Be true to yourself and always practice your vocation.
Love that. I agree 100%. So, again, thank you for your time. Thanks everyone for joining in, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Beyond the Policy.
Thanks, Matt.
Appreciate it. Thanks for hanging out with me on Beyond the Policy. If you got something out of today's conversation, pass it along to a friend, client, or colleague who might enjoy it too. You can always connect with me through the show notes or on LinkedIn. And remember, the best coverage always starts with the right conversations. Until next time, be better.